So the beautiful thing about constraints and creativity, you can now brainstorm, okay, if we know that the onboarding process is fixed, now you ask the question, how can we make it beautiful? But even then, a lot of people know that technology is powerful. Why do they never get around to it?
You're listening to the 7-Figure Leap podcast. We're here to leverage rich relationships and smart strategies to take your business to the next level. Here's your host, Dustin Riekman.
All right, welcome back to 7-Figure Leap. I'm really excited to have a special guest today, Ernesto Mandowsky. He is an alumni of our podcast Profits Accelerator, but much more than that, he's become a great friend. We did 75 Hard together. I've learned a lot from him, and he is an operations guru and a Notion nerd and all kinds of cool things that you're going to learn about today. And more than that, he's just a super high-octane entrepreneur and a really, really good guy. So Ernesto, I'm really grateful that you're here on the 7-Figure Leap. And welcome, and I'm just going to turn it over to you for a minute and let you give a little bit of context about what you do, and then we can start digging back into your entrepreneurial journey and finding out what has made you the man you are today, if that's not too much pressure.
Oh, it's all good. Thank you, Dustin. And for the listeners, Dustin is a force of nature. Having him in my life this year has been amazing. The short story on me, 15 years ago, I threw a party and made $30,000 in one night. And decided I want to get into hospitality. But more so, I wanted to do technology in that space. Everywhere I looked, the restaurant people said, we don't understand technology. The technology people said, we don't work in hospitality. And my parents said, what the hell are you thinking about getting into restaurants? So for a better part of 10 years, I seeked out the way that I could combine these passions. And did so, and had lots of twists and turns along the way. And that journey inspired me to start my own company about 4 years ago, the $1 Million Machine. And I'll tease the audience with that little intro there.
That's a great hook. You learned well with your storytelling. So you use the word hospitality. I feel like I just have to say it, out loud. So I was just down at the Story Brand Summit last month, and Will Guidara was one of the keynote speakers. He actually launched a coaching certification through StoryBrand for his book and his methodology, Unreasonable Hospitality. And you and I were chatting a little bit before we hit record. I think we both admire that. It was an amazing talk. It's a great book. And you said something that I thought was really insightful. It's like, hey, great. You've got this hospitality, this experience. You've got this magic that, however you're serving your clients or your restaurant in his case. But what's the technology behind that? What's the frameworks? What are the systems behind that? So do you want to wrap on that a little bit about your experience with hospitality, I guess, and really this, I don't know, I envision this Venn diagram of there's hospitality and the things you think about with that, which are usually restaurants, hotels, events, and then you have technology and systems and Notion and frameworks, and they don't usually overlap, but I feel like you're kind of living at the intersection. So you want to enlighten us a little bit on that?
Yeah, and fun fact, Will Guidara was a client of mine.
Really?
Not of mine, but of the company that I was working at 10 years ago. Our point of sale company was powering 11 Madison Park. So that, cool to see how this all has progressed. But to help people kind of understand this overlap, when they go to a restaurant and the server greets them and asks them for a beverage and asks them what their allergies are and asks them what they're celebrating. That is the hospitality. That is the art. That is, I think, what he is inspiring entrepreneurs to consider when designing their customer experience. What is invisible to the guest, what is invisible to everyone in the restaurant is the intense efficiency and reinforcement behaviors that the chef is instilling in the kitchen, in the back of the house. The back of the house in a tech company, it's like the engineering team, it's the product team, it's the account management, the services team, the support. And in entrepreneur land, in small businesses, we're one person, we're two people, we're three people, we have a VA. We don't have the extensive amount of resources like a restaurant does or a big tech company. So what do? this is where technology comes into play.
I like that. That's a great analogy of when you think of the peak experience at a restaurant, like what, where Will comes from, you think of like teams, right? And it seems the thing that really makes it magical is teams. And if you have the right leader, there's that, I like that art. It's sort of this art sprinkled over the top of the team, but there's a lot of science, right? And there's a lot of machinery or mechanisms in place to make all that run. And so you're saying for the people, I'll just ask you it this way. In your current world and the thing that you do now, like, you're not working, as far as I understand, with large teams and even restaurants, but you're working with, like you just said, 1, 2, 3 person founder-led entrepreneurial enterprises. So how do these things relate? Because they do seem like very disparate concepts, I guess, to me.
So everyone can connect with the restaurant. So when you share, like that story that I just said, when you arrive at a restaurant, the server asks you these 4 questions just to quickly screen and understand in your small business, when a client pays the invoice, what's the first thing that happens? They get an invoice, obviously, but then they start receiving an onboarding email like, hey, welcome to 7-Figure Leap. We're so excited to have you. Please fill out this intake form. Please tell us when your birthday is so we can send you an automated email. What are you looking to gain out of this? You're already collecting this information. And because we don't have teams and teams of people, we use technology. So technology is very powerful because it allows you to simplify and streamline a lot of these processes. But where we fall short with technology, the small person teams, is that they are so busy and focused on dishing out situational specials instead of delivering a prefix promise. Our friend John Neese, I don't know if he said it or if you made it up, like the promise for a price. It's like, hey, what's the fixed promise? I say prefix promise because when you go to 11 Madison Park, you're not asking them to change up their $300 menu because it's proven, like the chef knows what he's doing. And so you respect and honor that person.
Yeah.
But entrepreneurs are too busy like changing things up every day on the fly because they want to meet their clients' needs, not realizing the sabotage it's creating.
That's awesome. Yeah, like I'll give John Meach credit for that term, but a term that I also don't take any credit for. I really believe in the idea that creativity is really bred from constraint, right? Like it's really hard to be creative when you can just do anything. Where the creativity really gets powerful and starts to have a big impact is when you put it in a container, right? And it's like, here's your constraints. And so I love that analogy there with like the menu at a world-class restaurant experience is fixed, right? Like I can't just go in there and order anything I want because like, while that sounds appealing at one level, at another level, it's overwhelming and it just doesn't actually create the best experience. And so as entrepreneurs though, I think we can tend to feel like we're stifling our creativity if we put constraints or systems or processes around the way that we deliver things, right? It's like, and I think that's a problem for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially solo entrepreneurs, who many of us, I'll include myself in this bucket, have a history of sort of jumping around to different ideas and launching different things and trying new offers all the time, thinking we're being creative, but actually what we're creating is confusion. We're not creating a great experience for our customers or ourselves. So yeah, what do you think of that? Like the idea of creativity and constraints and that relationship?
So the beautiful thing about constraints and creativity, you can now brainstorm, okay, if we know that the onboarding process is fixed, now you ask the question, how can we make it beautiful?
Yeah.
But even then, a lot of people know that technology is powerful. Why do they never get around to it? One, because they maybe don't necessarily know exactly how to configure the technology. But 2, they have so many offers that are always changing. You can't build technology like that.
Yeah.
You have to build technology around a constraint, around a fixed scientific repeatable process. So once you decide that, okay, this is how I'm going to run my podcast guest accelerator or my marketing agency service or my coaching service or my event, once you decide that scientific step-by-step approach, now you can bring in the technology, and now you can actually, build this out really quickly to start saving the time and realizing those benefits.
Love that. Yeah, I know we're going to, a little later, we're going to make this really practical and give people like a step-by-step scorecard of what systems you need in place and what are the individual metrics or key numbers that you need to reach your business goals. I kind of jumped right in here in the middle. I was like hospitality, and it triggered me, and we got right into the weeds, which I think is really useful because it kind of gives people some insight into how you see the world and how you have some amazing analogies, honestly, between like the restaurant world and the entrepreneurial world or the business world. But I do want to take a step back, talk a little bit more about your own journey into this. So you have you alluded to the fact that you did this event and it sort of set you into this direction with your young life of hospitality and ultimately working around the restaurant industry in different ways. So tell me a little bit about those early days. Were you working for other companies? Was that event something that was your own venture? Like, when would you say you went from an employee to an entrepreneur in your own career?
I was always side hustling.
Okay.
As a full-time employee. The traumas from my parents around being a responsible young man and getting your engineering degree and getting your job. And you also were an engineer, and I think you spent over 10 years doing engineering. I worked at Deloitte. I was a tech consultant, learning big project management systems. But even while I was working on government projects, I was moonlighting, researching with the hospitality team at Deloitte, until one day I had an opportunity to join one of their hospitality projects, which is really cool. We're doing casino technology for a cruise company.
Oh, wow. That's a whole
yeah,
other one.
We're not going there. Before working at Deloitte, I had started baking bread, and I just loved this idea of baking challah bread. Challah is like a Jewish version of brioche, which is like the French toast. It's made with milk and butter, and it's delicious. And that's why French toast is awesome. And even while I was working at Deloitte and coming home on the weekends, I was still baking challah bread. And that turned into, I'm going to go to culinary school. I'm going to build a business around my challah bread. And I told everyone in culinary school about my passion about technology and restaurants, which actually led to my first job inside of restaurants. So all throughout this time, I was baking bread. Even when I was working in the restaurant, I was baking bread and learning from the bakery that I was setting up for the business I was working at. Even until today, I still am baking this challah bread, which has become this symbol or metaphor for like why I even started this company, why I'm even doing what I'm doing with systems and technology. Like why? Because no one cares about systems. That's kind of like the sad reality here.
I was gonna say I didn't want to like nod too hard, but like yeah, pretty much. So what is the analogy though? So if I'm tracking you, loving parents who wanted you to go to college and have the traditional path, and you did that, and you had this career in your young career at Deloitte, and you're into technology, but you start to find like little pockets within Deloitte to kind of scratch this itch with the hospitality industry and events and casinos and cruises and all that fun stuff. While you're doing a side hustle, baking bread, and presumably selling the bread, then you go to culinary school. And then you say in culinary school, I'm going to have a business with this bread. And now you're saying the bread is an analogy for what you do now. So you got to close a few gaps for me here, because there's a lot of, and that's what makes you so interesting. That's why I love these conversations. Is like, hold on, wait, what? So like Deloitte, breaking bread, culinary school. There's a lot there. So what is the bridge there between that young career and what business did you create with the breaking bread enterprise that you were doing?
So Hollaback Bakery was I guess my first official business that I started in college
Oh, cool.
before Deloitte, and that was what I was selling in New York, and I was dishing out these breads, and it was really about like shit. It wasn't just baking a basic loaf of bread and giving it to someone. Like I made Oreo cookie stuffed challah bread, or
Wow.
banana Nutella stuffed challah bread, like ground beef, onions, and all like empanada style, like challah bread. Very crazy, innovative approach to baking bread. Which for me, it's like, okay, how am I expressing this unique combination of flavors in a totally new medium, challah bread? When I wrote my first book, it was like, okay, how are you now expressing this unique combination of a creator's background, interests, and passions all inside of a specific product that you are delivering? So like, how are you Dustinifying the seven-figure leap? And for the listeners who don't know so much about your product or your accelerator, like the simplicity that you bring is something that like makes your program so unique and impactful. Like you keep things so simple. It has actually impacted my storytelling. That's the first thing. Like the challah is the expression of your uniqueness. And then the second thing I would say is that most entrepreneurs, you ask them like, oh, do you work out, or do you like eat healthy, or do you like take care of yourself? Like, oh no, like I don't have time. And it's like, well, your business is it's gonna burn out. You're not gonna make it. So you kind of like have to make the time. You have to make the time to spend time with your wife, or bake bread, or work out. And so how do you make time? Well, you create systems in place so that you could actually feel peaceful when Friday from 2 to 5, I'm like making the dough and shaping the loaves. And, I'm not freaking out on a Friday afternoon. I can just chill while I'm baking bread. I can like visualize, I can manifest. And so for me, it's baking bread. For someone else, it might be rucking. For another person, it might be, cooking. I don't know. But having people like define, like find their challah, like identify, like what is that thing that is going to give them joy, should be a motivation in and of itself to start a business so that you can create time for these things.
I like that. So number one part of this analogy is uniqueness. Number two, I wrote like 4 words, but I wrote time, joy, like freedom from the business. So like you love your business so much, but if you're constantly pointing at it as like, because of this business that I'm creating, I have no time for recreation, for family, for taking care of myself, exercising, mental health, all those sort of things. And so in essence of what you're getting at here is like the systems create freedom. And then from that freedom, you can do a lot of things that actually not only make the business more effective, but it really serves you as a human so that you're not getting burnt out and then eventually burning the business to the ground, which so many entrepreneurs do. Like when they hit a certain level of success, it sort of self-implodes because they overextend themselves so deeply into that, they lose any identity outside of the business itself, right?
They lose their identity, they overhire, they overinvest, the runway shoots to the moon, the revenue doesn't hit at they implode basically.
Yeah. Love that. Is there any more to this challah bread analogy that we want to unpack before we kind of zoom up and talk about what you actually do for your clients today?
No, that pretty much covers it. I would say, humble plug, I do bake. I'm going to start doing monthly bakes so that people can actually unplug on Fridays. I mean, not fully, but like for 90 minutes of the day to like bake with me. So,
I know you're in my name. You have to be careful with how you say, like you come bake with me and on Friday afternoon, right? So
True. Yes.
No, that's awesome. So this is fun to unpack because I know Ernesto pretty deeply, right? We spent 90 days together. We've stayed in a lot of contact since then. He's helped us with a lot of projects, 7-figure leap. And I knew hospitality. I knew a little bit about the baking with the challah bread, but kind of seeing how these things intertwine and how they've been part of your own personal evolution, like it really is insightful to me. Like why you're so passionate about systems as like a form of freedom. Because like you just kind of said it, self-effacing, but I think it's true. Like no one really wants systems. It's like no one like goes to bed dreaming about systems at night. Maybe Ernesto, but like most business owners don't. What we actually want is the things they give us, right? And how they serve us. If they can give us a more powerful way to express our uniqueness and a powerful way to have more freedom, to be more creative. Like that's the juice that kind of comes from squeezing the systems orange, I guess. Right. So that was really cool to unpack that. And we talked a little bit about kind of the overarching theme of hospitality and how front of the house, back of the house, and kind of like there's a lot under the radar for truly extraordinary experiences that maybe you don't see. And we have ways to recreate that in a small business and with the solopreneur or small founder-led business. So all that kind of established. So tell us, like, what do you do now? Like $1 Million Machine, or you just wrote a book. Like, who is your ideal client, and what do you do for them, so that people can really get to know the present day Ernesto and how you're serving the world right now?
So my ideal client is someone who's been in business between 2 and 10 years. Someone who has a growth mindset, is open to change, and is focused on actually growing their business. Actually changing the ways that they work to create a new result for themselves. It's mainly people who provide services, coaches, they create events, they offer masterminds. And the reason why I say that is, if using restaurants as an analogy, if you're dishing out a product, if you're creating like you sell meat sticks, or maybe you do still like that's a pretty uniform thing. Like that's a Big Mac. It's a conveyor belt. It's the same. Doesn't require too much complexity, because like once you have your formula, boom. When you're providing a service to different clients with different needs and different backgrounds, it becomes a bit more complex. There's a lot more nuance. And these types of offers are more valuable. You can command anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 a client. And so when you have the conviction in the value you're providing, is one thing. The other thing is, how is that client going to receive a $20,000 experience or a $100,000 experience at a bargain price of $20,000?
Right.
Those are the people that I'm interested in working with, and that I am actively helping design what I call the 5 recipes to help them build their $1 million machine.
Love it. And so what are the 5 recipes? You kind of teed that up.
So the 5 recipes, it starts with your transformation. It's the core offer that you provide, creating absolute clarity around that transformation, whether it is a 90-day accelerator program, or building of an initial website, or a delivery of an event. When you have rock solid clarity on how that transformation works, you now have the confidence that whether it's 10 or 50 people coming in the door, they're all going to get an amazing experience, which leads to the second recipe, which is connection. The connection process is business development, it's partnership, it's sales. It's how you are enrolling different parts of your network into the transformation. Once you exhaust everyone in your ecosystem, it's time to head to recipe number 3, which is communication, also known as marketing. Marketing is creating your podcast, your webinar, your lead magnets, your checklists, everything having to do with your email service provider. People think of like Kit, or they think of Go High Level, like all the marketing stuff to get people to communicate to people the value that you offer. Most entrepreneurs, every entrepreneur, I would say, is very familiar with these 3 concepts of transformation, of delivering of a service, sales, and marketing. And where I would say 90% of entrepreneurs never get to are recipes 4 and 5. Recipe number 4 is organization. How do you now actually turn your business into a company, into an enterprise with teams, with priorities, with your technology, with specific tactics on how you do things. You start to hire people, you start to bring in more people into your organization. And this is where I kind of start to thrive and help people take that leap into the organization with technology. But to prevent the company from just being a lifeless technology machine filled with rules and regulations, you have the fifth and final recipe, which is actualization, which is the idea of culture, which is how do you help everyone inside of your team see their personal missions and visions inside of the companies. Because if every person on your team knows that through working at your company, their personal vision and mission is being realized, then, you know, they're going to perform at the highest levels. Like, they're not going to fuck around. Excuse the language. Like, they know that their performance is directly driving the profit, which is directly feeding back into their lives.
Yeah.
You know, you become a bullet train.
Yeah. I love that. And I guess it kind of goes without saying, but just to say it out loud. So would you consider these 5 recipes progressive? Meaning like you got to nail number 1 enough before you move to 2, before you move to 3, and then 4 and 5 are kind of the higher levels of expression of success in a business?
Yeah, I want to say they're linear. I know that you see the success graph. It's like the line. It's like what it really looks like.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, okay, you have exhibit A. You know, client has somewhat of an offer and not super clear on it. Like has something. Gets on LinkedIn, is writing every single day for a year, and all of a sudden gets 50 leads in one day and 50 clients sign up. Because that person never did work on the transformation, now you have to deliver 50 clients, and it's like, are you going to deliver immaculate service? I don't know. Maybe. But I wouldn't want to put that bet. I wouldn't want to invest a ton of money in ads if knowing that like it was going to bring me 100 clients tomorrow because I actually would deliver 100 terrible experiences. So I think of them as a sequence.
Yeah.
Knowing, of course, you know, everyone works on a little bit of all of them.
Sure.
But
yeah. And it's iterative, right? Like you kind of got like the basic table stakes of one before you can kind of move to the next. But then it's not like when you create the culture in step 5 or the actualization, then now you're done, right? Like then you'll have another offer and then you'll have to like change your marketing again. And, you know, so it is iterative and ongoing. So I would think a lot of our audience, when you kind of think of them in that way, like transformation, connection, communication or marketing, organization, actualization, I think a lot of our audience would probably be like, I only think of the first 3, right? Like I know I got to get an offer and I got to have some good marketing and I got to be able to sell it. And maybe they feel like it sounds almost too aspirational to be like, and at some point I got to figure out like an organization and actualization, especially actualization, right? We're thinking of this like hierarchy of needs. It's like, oh man, where do you usually kind of fit into that pie? Do you address all 5, or you're like, hey, once you've kind of got the first 3 going and you're starting to feel the pressure that this is about to break, or I'm at my breaking point, I'm at my personal capacity, I need help, you come in and really do 4 and 5, or where do you see yourself fitting in best with this?
So the really cool thing about this, I think it was the first time you were personally hearing a lot of this stuff. Like, everyone needs all 5 at all times.
Sure.
But like Dustin's version of actualization, okay, you teach us about actualization in the accelerator. Like, what's your vision statement? You know, it's 1 line. Like, that's enough. That's all you need when you're just starting out. When clients, you know, we're talking about the scorecard in a bit, like I have thought through the maturity model of a small business owner. So when you're just starting out, you are like a pop-up pilot. Think of yourself as like the food truck that shows up on Tuesday nights to the park square, like experimenting with your hamburger.
Yeah.
At some point, what we say, when you hit 200K, you now become a committed cafe. Like, you're committed to this journey. You probably quit your full-time job. You're in it to win it. And from 200K to about 750K in revenue, you are in this committed cafe stage. At 750, you become a booming brasserie. You start to have lots of activity. Maybe you have a second offer in the business. And till about 1.5 million, you're in that booming brasserie phase. Then you become a 5-star food empire. And then at 3 million, you become what I call a Michelin designed masterpiece, a business that is one of one, that is uniquely known around the world for what it does. And if you think of, I can't remember the guy in Italy, Osteria, Massimo Bottura is one of the restaurants. I mean, all these chefs, they have their one iconic restaurant that people become known for. And when you think of your business, you become known for that one thing. So, Dustin's the 7-figure leap guy, Ernesto's the $1 million machine. Everyone, Tiago Forte's the building a second brain. Like, everyone becomes Donald Miller, the story brand guy. Like, we become the one of one people in that brand. And at each step of these 5 phases, you have a little bit of transformation, a little bit of connection, a little bit of communication. It just looks a little different all throughout the way. And that's what I help people kind of navigate and configure as they are going through those processes.
Okay, that's super helpful. I'm glad I asked it that way, in that you always have all 5, but different ones will be emphasized at different stages. And I would think also the entrepreneur is going to be innately strong or focused on different parts, different recipes, and they're going to need more help with others, right? And so I would imagine a lot of the people you work with are more visionary. Maybe they're good at their offer. They're good at delivering the thing they do. They've got some sort of special expertise. I'm guessing many of them are not good at, or not as good, at the more growth oriented things like the organization, the actualization, like especially the organization. Like, that's one that jumps out to me when I think of the thing I don't do well, or the thing I don't naturally do well, and I have to have who's in my corner to help support, is the organization, the scaling, the systems, the SOPs, the stuff that I'm like, I guess I need to do that, right? Because it's not like the thing that fires me up, but I also have felt the pain and experienced the pleasure of not doing that and doing that well. And it's super necessary. And that's where, having someone like Ernesto who loves that stuff is a great compliment in the business buildings. But did I summarize that right? I mean, so you get these 5 phases. I love the restaurant analogies: the pop-up, the cafe, the brassiere, the 5-star food empire, all the way up to a Michelin designed masterpiece, which I really like. That is like you have a truly unique offering and a unique identity in the marketplace. I think that's like the aspirational identity for most people that listen to this, is like, man, I want to be known for something. Story brand, self-publishing, kit, hopefully 7-figure leap, right? $1 million machine, that you sort of become synonymous with an experience that everyone knows you deliver better than anyone else. And I do agree. I think 3 million and up is like kind of usually the threshold where people start to become known as in that way. So,
yeah, you capture that exactly. The what you didn't say, well, I didn't say it either. You alluded to it. You said, "Oh, I am not really great at setting up these systems," and for Dustin or any entrepreneur to hire a consultant like me, a fractional COO, a true fractional COO, to come in. And I'm not going to reveal numbers, but I do know, like, you made over a 5-figure investment to bring someone in to help you with a couple of things, light touch. We'll meet with you for a couple of sessions. That's not enough. Like, that's not going to give you the lift that you really need.
Yeah.
And so what I'm really committed to is not coming in and coaching the founder like once a month. And no, that's not really what I'm focusing on. But there is a massive population of people on the planet right now that are vastly underutilized. And people like the VAs in the Philippines, I'm going to like hire for $6 a day and I'm going to like scale to the moon. It's like, no, you're not. I mean, yes, maybe you're going to hire someone for $10 an hour, but like, you get what you pay for. And these VA agencies, like, they're telling you that they're training their VAs. They are a little bit. But they're not training their VAs to think like COOs. They're not training them to think like business managers. And so when Dustin, or when listener, when you join $1 Million Machine, I don't want the founder to be in my weekly calls. The founder is amazing at like selling and serving and speaking and hosting events and podcast. Like, go do your thing.
Right.
I want the VA, I want the business manager, I want your fractional COO to come work with me, because spoiler alert, like, your COO doesn't know anything about technology, or doesn't know how to like really tap in to the wizardry that tools like Notion, tools like that, like the magic that can be unlocked. Well, the art of that Will Gadara is talking about, like, the COO knows how to get things done and knows how to like move the ball, but doesn't know how to like implement the tech to take that next level.
I love that. I hit his hot button. I was trying to find it. I hit it. So you're the fuel on the fire, but you're bringing like the technology fuel over and throwing it onto a healthy fire, but you're really exploding it into a great healthy kindling or inferno, I guess, right? But like the thing that, as you were describing that experience, like, you thrive as a sort of technology wizard that comes in here and works with people that are already doing a good job, but you're really an amplifier of someone else's talents to create really, really outsized results using the latest and greatest technology. I mean, is that a fair summary of how you see yourself?
Yeah, definitely. And I use, you said it, like hospitality, like I use restaurants as an analogy because it's the way to just declare your authority. It's like, people come in and like, well, I use Kit in this way. It's like, all right, well, you're not for me. If you want to work here, like, you got to follow the recipes. You don't go to culinary school and tell the instructor how to cut the knives or how to butcher the chicken. Like, you learn what they tell you. And so, when I'm in session with people, I really channel that Gordon Ramsay energy to tell you why you're fucking up by not properly labeling your files or your Google Drive, why it's a total mess. And I'll just like tell you, like, hey, you are not doing this, and like calling people out because they need to hear it and they need to follow the protocol.
And you're usually working most directly with the quote unquote operator, whether that's a COO or a manager, maybe even an executive assistant in certain types of businesses, but it's the doer who really wants to do things, and they are making those advancements, and they are the one that gets delegated to when the visionary founder says, I got a new idea, let's do this. But you're working with them in a very direct manner and kind of no holds barred with the passion that you bring, and really pushing them, right? And challenging them in a healthy way.
Hashtag no filter. Yeah. And, a lot of these, what happens with these VAs or operators is the visionary is so passionate about whatever they're doing that they like almost steamroll the operator. And that does wrong by the business, because visionaries unintentionally are sabotaging their own business. Mm-hmm. Like they're mistaking the shiny object for the excitement. No, you're literally sabotaging your business by choosing to launch a podcast tomorrow or whatever it is. And so because the visionaries default like, oh, shiny object, the visionary is not going to train their operator in a way to challenge the visionary, because it's it's not going to happen. So through this powerful empowerment dynamic, like the triangle, it's not a drama triangle, but I'm really like empowering the operator to be a champion, to stand for the growth of the business, and not just the implosion that's unintentionally created.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Well, we'll transition here in a minute to sort of just letting you teach the listeners about some of the things they need to know in a very specific, like practical way. We love to always leave people with very actionable takeaways. Two things before we get there. One, I'd love to hear just a little bit more about your own vision for kind of 3 years from now, I know you're expecting a child. You got a lot of really exciting things on the personal side of your life, and I feel like you've really found your calling here and the words for it, and you really are dialed into the people you can serve best and how you serve them best. So where do you see your own business, since you're like fired up about helping other people realize their vision and and being this empowering force? How are you doing that for yourself, I guess? Like, where do you see your business going in the next 3 years?
So in 3 years, I'd like to be in the 5-star food empire territory, past 1.5 million in sales, on track towards masterpiece, serving 150 clients. I mean, I'll have a very vibrant business operator membership where people are just coming in and learning. I have a team of coaches. I have my own certification program for people who want to just learn how to build $1 million machines. Really have it as a way to create wealth for themselves. And there's lots of online academies like General Assembly and all these like no code, like software developer boot camps, but nothing really exists for no code operations. And so that's kind of where I'm leading into.
Yeah, no code operations. So I kind of know what that means, but for the people out there who aren't in your world or aren't even necessarily all that familiar with like Notion as a tool in particular, like what do you mean by no code operations?
So no code automations. So
automation. Okay, I didn't hear you.
So tools like before, back in the day, like 20 years ago, if you wanted to do anything, you need to be like a developer. You need to like write code, and you'd have to hire someone in India and pay a lot of money per hour. But nowadays, with tools like Kit and tools like Zapier and Notion and ClickUp and Circle, everything, it's all like click, 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 configure instead of like writing code. So it really unlocks the ability for anyone to become an operations expert. You just have to like understand how these concepts kind of are strung together.
Yeah.
So that's where we want to live, teaching people how can you follow 5 recipes to build $1 million machine and beyond.
Okay, perfect. I feel like I'd be missing an opportunity if I didn't, for 30 seconds here at least, be like, Ernesto was in the accelerator 8 months. It's a 3-month experience. So I guess 8 to 5, 5 to 8 months ago. So give us a snapshot of sort of like what that's meant to you, what it was like in there, what the community's like, just high level things that were your sort of takeaways from being in that community and getting to know me and the 7-Figure Leap.
Really transformational program. This is the real. Clip this part.
I'm going to be smiling on the camera now so people I can clip this.
Transformational program. Really, I was, aside from learning the concepts, I was going through my own rebrand of my business while I was learning everything. And so it was just like so much gasoline that was like being injected into me. I got my first 5-figure client. I just like sprinted towards like a total relaunch of my business. And now here I am. I wrote a book. I mean, all the clarity, like you were saying, oh, I found the words to speak about this stuff. A lot of what the accelerator is just like finding the words to explain what you do. And doing it on a podcast requires you to be succinct.
Yes.
And telling a story to keep people engaged. So it was all like amazing theory to then immediately apply and start like doing it. I've recorded 50 podcast episodes since the accelerator. Yes, I had some help because I worked with a podcast booking agency, but like doing that work just really increased my confidence in what I was doing and what I am doing.
I love that. And to give kudos back to Ernesto, I mean, hasn't been a passive member of the community. He was very active during the accelerator, and as an alumni, he's still part of the 7-Figure Leap community. And we've got a lot of cool stuff we're going to be doing here moving into the new year to serve him and all those other alumni. But, he went on his own fruition and created an entire Notion version of our playbooks, right? So as people go through the accelerator, we've got very simple tools. Like I do like to keep things simple. So we've kind of got Google tools, Google versions of different things that we're building as we go, and they work. And Ernesto's like, man, this could be so much better in Notion. And so he actually created a whole like Notion playbook version of the same steps that we follow in the accelerator with expansions, right? So you can have like a simple CRM in there, and you can do a lot of cool things that go even beyond the strict scope of the accelerator itself. And so now we have that as a free bonus. So when people sign up and they come in, if they are a Notion, devotee like Ernesto and a lot of other people in our community, they can use that version. And so I'm very grateful to Ernesto. Never missed an opportunity to give him a shout out, because that was really awesome that he did that. He put training videos together for people. It was really, really cool. So thank you again for just being an awesome member of our community and such a good friend to me, and just a good resource within Seven Figure Leap to so many people. Awesome. Well, yeah, I would love to spend just the last several minutes here, Ernesto, dumping more value on people. And I know you have a growth scorecard, and I think you could do some teaching around that. So I'm just going to give the mic back to you for however long you need. Walk us through the growth scorecard, what that is, the components of it. And then, of course, I think you have a resource that people can go to actually use it. So tell us all about that.
So the growth scorecard is basically, it's your vision on one paper. It's a one-page vision for your business. So sometimes people hear the advice, oh, you have to make a business plan. It's like, that's long and complex and convoluted and many paragraphs. And if I say, Dustin, what's your 1-year vision? Like, how much revenue do you want to make? Or listener, the person says 400K. And it's like, great. How are you going to do it? How many people are you going to work with? You're going to say 100. So, okay, great. Well, that's the first number on your scorecard. So the number of clients is the first number that you start to break down this top line revenue. So if we have 400,000, you divide by 100 clients, you now know the second number, which is your average revenue per client per year, which if you divide 400K by 100, you get 4,000.
Yep.
So immediately the first question is my price $4,000? No? Well, you got to make it $4,000 if you want to create this vision. The third number is your conversion percentage. So I ask an entrepreneur, hey, what's your conversion percentage? They're going to say, oh, I'm not really sure. It's like, well, maybe you need some systems to start keeping track, but we're not going to go there. Let's assume the conversion is 25%. Healthy, conservative number. So if you need 100 clients and you divide by 25%, which is really multiplied by 4, that means you need to have 400 leads. So do you know 400 leads in your network? The answer probably is no. Or maybe it's yes. Maybe you know 400 people, but are they all interested in your offer? Probably not. So that also, it's like, okay, well, how do I now get 400 leads? Another question, like, okay, how do I start doing this? The fifth number is your utilization percentage. And so how I define utilization is the percent of your email list that actually chooses to book a call with you. Just to be really conservative, I use the number 10%. So if you need to have 400 leads, 400 discovery calls, and you divide by 10%, that gives you the sixth number, which is the number of subscribers in your list. 400 divided by multiplied by 10 is 4,000. Do you have 4,000 emails on your list? No? Well, maybe you need to create some sort of list building mechanism to do so. Clients don't give a crap about systems, but they care about their vision. They care about wanting to make that happen. And so I've created the Growth Scorecard just to give people a simple way to actually articulate their vision. Because if they don't actually create a plan on how they're going to make this happen, then it's just going to be a dream. So if you're listening and it's just too much math to keep up with, or you're driving and with your pencil, I have a very simple way that everyone can get their growth scorecard. I actually don't speak to someone unless they get their growth scorecard, because when I speak to them, I don't want to like find out about their visions. It's like, hey, what's on your, like, I saw your scorecard. How are you going to make it happen? We just like immediately get into building mode. So to get your scorecard, you just go to score.yourmdm.co. It'll take you to a quiz. It's 5 questions, and you'll get your scorecard right in your inbox.
That's awesome, man. I love that. So I'll say this slowly because there's numerous letters in here, right? So score.yourmdm.co. And so yourmdm.co is Ernesto's main website. So that stands for $1 Million Machine. If you're thinking, what are those letters? So score.yourmdm.co, simple 5-question intake. It will create your 1-page vision with these very specific numbers. And I love this. Like when you think about the types of things Dustin loves and the things I like to teach from, these are the types of tools and frameworks that they're so powerful. They're like simple and sophisticated, right? And I think that's what's so cool, because as you were going through those numbers, which on the surface you think, well, everyone in business knows that. I guarantee you 90% of the people listening to this don't know all those numbers. And so even the act of having to even assume a number creates a really healthy thought exercise. And you're going to find a few of these, most likely, that you're like, oh crap, like I'm actually really good at converting leads. And I'm really, I seem to have a really high number of calls coming from my email list. If only I could double my subscribers, I could double all the stuff above it, right? Or maybe 400K is not the right goal, right? Maybe I want to do a 600K, or maybe it's just 200K. But you get to decide how these numbers shake out. But going through the thought exercise of having to commit to a number and then analyze what changes would be required to change that number, that's a business strategy, in a nutshell right there. And then Ernesto, what happens when people, they fill out the scorecard and they say, I really need some Ernesto in my life? Are you going to walk them through and review these metrics and then come up with a plan of action they could take to improve whatever is lacking?
So on that 1-pager, they're actually going to get like what the last 12 months, like the current state, and then immediately to the right, it's like the future state with that vision number there.
Got it.
So they'll receive it. They get a video course, start explaining how they could actually impact each of those numbers. And when we get on the phone to talk about it, we put the numbers in. I will ask you, do you want some help with that? I think you taught me this sales strategy.
Right.
Do you want some help with that? And they're going to say, yeah, sure. And I'm saying, okay, great. Well, these are the ways that we can get started. And let's build $1 million machine.
Beautiful, man. That's awesome. Well, you definitely dropped the value bomb there at the end. We kind of went all the way back from the initial precipitating event, all the way through, the unreasonable hospitality and around to some F-bombs and some Gordon Ramsay. Those are good. And then we close out with the growth scorecard and make this super practical and actionable for people. Know your numbers and, knowing your numbers, and then be able to create systems to improve those numbers and put you back into your own zone of genius, doing the thing you actually love to do by having someone like Ernesto help you with the parts of the business that maybe you don't enjoy or don't feel as strong in, to actually create more freedom. Systems create more freedom, I think, is maybe a contrarian thought for some people, but it's totally true. I've experienced it myself this year in my own business, and I've seen the power of what Ernesto can do for others and what he's done for me and our community. So, Ernesto, I guess final call to action. I can maybe repeat. Does the scorecard where you want people to go next?
Get a scorecard and start today.
Get your scorecard. Score.yourmdm.co. Ernesto Mandowsky, heck of a guy, great friend, and really, really smart person to have in your corner to empower your operator and help you realize your 1-page vision. So, Ernesto, thanks again, man, for being here. I look forward to seeing you in the community. And keep up the good work, okay?